Marvel Zombies is shaping up to be one of the darkest and most daring projects ever imagined within the superhero genre, transforming familiar icons into something terrifying, tragic, and emotionally complex. Instead of presenting heroes as symbols of hope, this story explores what happens when power remains intact but morality collapses. The concept flips the traditional superhero narrative on its head, plunging the world into a nightmare where the very figures once trusted to save humanity become its greatest threat. This is not simply a horror twist layered onto capes and costumes. It is a psychological and apocalyptic reimagining that asks unsettling questions about hunger, control, and the fragility of heroism. The world of Marvel Zombies exists in the aftermath of a catastrophic outbreak that spreads faster than any villain ever could. It is not a typical infection that weakens its hosts. Instead, it preserves strength, intelligence, and superhuman abilities while stripping away empathy and restraint. The result is horrifying: heroes with godlike powers driven by an insatiable hunger. Cities fall not because humanity lacks defenders, but because its defenders have turned. Skies once protected by flying saviors now carry shadows of predators scanning for survivors. Streets once secured by watchful guardians become hunting grounds. One of the most disturbing elements of this story is the emotional memory retained by the infected heroes. They remember who they were. They remember the people they loved. That awareness creates a tragic undertone beneath the brutality. When a fallen Avenger hovers above a ruined skyline, there is recognition in their eyes, a flicker of what used to be, before hunger overtakes it. This internal conflict adds psychological depth to the horror, turning what could have been simple monsters into fractured reflections of their former selves. The tone of Marvel Zombies is unapologetically intense. It embraces horror imagery while maintaining the cinematic scale expected from a superhero universe. Battles are no longer about saving civilians. They are about survival against unstoppable forces. The infected heroes do not lose their powers. They wield them with terrifying efficiency. Superspeed becomes a blur of unstoppable violence. Genius-level intelligence becomes strategic domination. Mystical abilities twist into tools of devastation. Every encounter feels high stakes because the threat is both personal and overwhelmingly powerful. Amid the devastation, pockets of survivors emerge. Some are ordinary humans who have learned to adapt in hiding, while others are uninfected heroes fighting not just for survival but for redemption. These remaining defenders face impossible choices. They are forced to confront former allies, mentors, and friends who now stand as enemies. The emotional weight of these confrontations defines the story's core. It is not just about defeating monsters. It is about grieving them while fighting them. The narrative also explores the idea of containment versus cure. Rumors circulate among survivors that the infection may have an origin beyond simple biology, perhaps cosmic, mystical, or technological. This opens the door to exploration beyond brute force solutions. The remaining heroes debate whether to destroy the infected completely or attempt to reverse what has happened. That moral dilemma becomes central. Is redemption possible when the damage feels irreversible? Visually, Marvel Zombies is expected to push boundaries rarely seen in mainstream superhero storytelling. The bright, colorful world associated with heroic triumph is replaced by shadows, firelit ruins, and desaturated skylines. Iconic locations appear twisted and abandoned. Battlefields stretch across crumbling landmarks. The contrast between once glorious imagery and its corrupted state reinforces the emotional impact of the fall. The horror is amplified because audiences recognize what has been lost. Character dynamics evolve under extreme pressure. Leadership shifts among the remaining survivors as they grapple with fear and responsibility. Some heroes harden emotionally, believing eradication is the only path forward. Others cling to hope, insisting that the infected can still be saved. These ideological clashes create tension even among allies. Trust becomes fragile. Every mission carries risk not only of failure but of infection. One of the most powerful threads in the story involves the hunger itself. Unlike mindless zombies, these infected beings experience an agonizing awareness of their cravings. They speak. They strategize. They justify their actions. Some attempt to resist, isolating themselves to prevent further harm. Others surrender completely, embracing predatory instincts. This layered portrayal transforms the infection from a simple virus into a metaphor for unchecked power and desire. As the outbreak spreads beyond Earth's boundaries, the scale expands dramatically. Signals travel into space, drawing attention from cosmic forces who view the infection as a threat to universal balance. The idea that even intergalactic entities fear what Earth has become elevates the stakes beyond planetary survival. The survivors realize that if containment fails, the infection could consume entire galaxies. Action sequences in Marvel Zombies are described as relentless and emotionally charged. Fights are not clean or triumphant. They are desperate. Each confrontation carries the possibility of loss, not just physical defeat but emotional devastation. When a survivor faces a corrupted former teammate, the battle is layered with history. Flashbacks of camaraderie clash against the brutal present. These moments remind viewers of the humanity that once existed beneath the infection, despite its darkness. The story does not abandon hope entirely. There are glimpses of resilience, sacrifice, and unity among the survivors. Bonds form in the harshest conditions. Characters who once operated independently learn to rely on one another. Small victories become monumental achievements. Even a temporary safe haven feels like a triumph. The soundtrack accompanying this narrative is expected to reflect its intensity. Ominous tones build suspense as infected heroes approach. Silence punctuates moments of dread. When action erupts, the score surges with chaotic energy. Yet there are quieter melodies during scenes of reflection, underscoring the tragedy of what has been lost. This balance between horror and emotion keeps the story grounded even as it ventures into extreme territory. As the climax approaches, the survivors uncover a potential breakthrough, a chance to confront the source of the infection directly. The final act becomes more than a battle. It becomes a confrontation with the root cause of corruption. Whether that source is technological arrogance, cosmic interference, or human error. The showdown forces characters to face uncomfortable truths about responsibility and consequence. The emotional resolution avoids simple restoration. Even if progress is made, scars remain. Cities cannot be rebuilt overnight. Trust cannot be restored instantly. The survivors understand that whatever future awaits them will be shaped by the lessons learned during the collapse. Heroism, they realize, is not defined by power alone, but by restraint, compassion, and the willingness to protect others even when hope feels distant. Marvel Zombies ultimately redefines what a superhero story can be. It dares to ask what happens when symbols of hope become cautionary tales. It merges horror with epic scale, tragedy with action, and despair with resilience. By preserving the personalities and memories of its infected characters, it transforms a simple apocalypse into an emotionally layered exploration of identity and consequence. In this reimagined universe, the line between hero and monster is heartbreakingly thin. Power without morality becomes devastation. Yet even in a world overrun by darkness, the spark of resistance endures. The story stands as both a terrifying spectacle and a reminder that heroism is not about invincibility, it is about choice. It is about choice.